This week, there are lots of things to talk about. Netflix brings TV's measurement revolt to heel. Meta reels in Google's crown as the ad revenue king for the first time ever. YouTube should get even more powerful this summer, like it needs it. There's also some interesting stuff out of that whole OpenAI, Elon Musk knife fight. I've got a few observations from the front lines of advertising more generally, and it's been an interesting time with Harry Potter and a shared immersive experience that looks like, despite the ups and downs of its founder, is stronger than ever. I'm David Bloom, co-founder of Next TMT, and this here podcast, Next TMT Talks, with my co-founder Daniel Frankel, here on the flagship Sunday evening, Monday morning conversation about all things technology, media, and telecom. With that, we'll get to it. Daniel, how are you, sir?
Really good, Dave. Really good. Just, ups and downs, gutters and strikes. Where do you want to start today?
Well, let's start with Nielsen. Everybody likes to hate on Nielsen, but it's kind of like the weather. Everyone talks about it, but no one does anything, to quote the immortal line from Will Rogers of 100 years ago. So,
yeah, it's staggering to me if you told me 10 years ago that we'd still be having this discussion. That was when ComScore merged with Rintrack, and they identified them as a legit competitor in a previously one-horse race. We're still having this discussion. It boiled over last year.
And let me just put, there have been a whole lot of horses trying to get in the starting gate, and some have gotten at least down the front first turn.
Video Amp. Yeah, there's quite a few.
Some solid companies that have some value and are making some money. And
it's interesting. Last year, Nielsen finally moved from analog panels, first-person diaries of what they were watching, when they were watching it, who they were watching it with, to actual big data, set-box-driven, smart TV-driven, electronic.
You mean real stuff, not just surveys of what do you vaguely recall you may have watched for a little while yesterday and happened to write down in a diary?
It caused dramatic changes or reductions in the amount of, or not significant, I guess is the word to use. In some cases, 20%. In the case of streaming, over-the-air broadcast, their audience has suddenly shrunk overnight. Cable, which had been on the run, increased. So there was a big backlash. The ratings council told them, we approved you, but second, you need to go back to the drawing board on this. So Nielsen retreated, and this fall they're due to come out with a revised version of their new hybrid scheme that involves old world and new techniques. In the meantime, Paramount, all these major agencies, Warner Brothers Discovery, they've all re-upped with Nielsen. So there's not a lot of, you're hearing terms like, Variety was one of the publications that came out with it ahead of the upfronts. TV measurement backlash or revolt was the term they used in the headline. And there's really no revolt. If you listen to the agency heads, it's pretty quiet now. It was at one time last year when there were negotiations, I think, with Nielsen, a bigger deal, but it's not heading into the front an issue. Nielsen is the de facto measurement company for TV still, and will stay that way for a while.
Plus ça change, plus le même, as they say in Francais.
Who says
the French.
Victor
The more things
Wembanyama?
change, the more, well, he probably says it too, because he is French. Not to mention AJ Mitchell, who's also used to play with him on a French team, though he's technically Belgian. But he played with him on a French team, the 97s or whatever they call them, before they both became big NBA stars. But plus ça change means the more things change, the more they stay the same.
I saw the future of the NBA, and everybody's been talking about it for a couple of years now. Wembanyama, this impossibly long, dynamic player who can dribble, shoot, pass, tower over everybody.
Hit it.
It is on full display. I mean, get yourself a Victor Wembanyama, or like us Lakers fans, get ready, go fishing. So anyway, TMT,
right.
Technology, Media, Telecom. What do you got, Dave?
First time in literally ever, Google's ad revenue was outstripped by Meta. And it is a lot, like $244 billion to 240 billion. I mean, they're both really large numbers. And it's interesting because Meta keeps spending, $100 billion. I think it's 150 billion. I kind of lost track. The numbers shift on capital expenditures to build out further its AI stuff to ever more precisely targeted advertising to incredibly fine slices of the 3.5 billion people it has across all its platforms, WhatsApp and Instagram with Reels.
I got to tell you,
all the rest.
As an Insta user, and I'll admit it, I'm an older demographic, still a Facebook.
I think they call it a geriatric Instagram user. It's just sort of like the terrible thing they say about women who are older 35 who are having babies.
They discovered last year that folks that come to your house and remove unwanted beehives and hornet hives and all the tools they use and the suits they wear, they discovered that I'll watch those videos at any disposable time I have. I'll just stay there and I'll watch it. I'll watch another one and I'll watch another one. And
this may be more information than we needed, but certainly not as much as Facebook is extracting.
Highlights. Anthony Scaramucci, the former Trump cabinet member who lasted 7 days.
He was a press secretary for 11 days. Not a cabinet member.
All right. It's been 4 years, a lot of news cycles ago, a lot of distractions. So yeah, it knows me pretty well. And I get it. It's like, and I won't waylay the conversation, but one of our sponsors, Looper Insights, did a survey on LinkedIn this week and asked, what do you think will happen when later this summer YouTube is integrated to the Google TV discovery layer? What will happen to CTV? And I'm just thinking bad things. I mean, how do you compete with the stickiness of somebody who knows exactly what kind of McDonald's French fry you like and gets into your subdural amygdala or whatever it is in here?
Amygdala. Subdural amygdala. Subdural is beneath the skin, but amygdala is the little emotion center of the brain.
If we were brain surgeons, we would have a chance. But go ahead, Dave. I'm sorry. You have the floor.
I had it briefly. I missed it so much. It's been gone.
We were talking about the video power of Meta and how.
Yeah, well, Meta. It's interesting because Meta's down about 3.5% in the share, and its shares are down about 3.5% in the last month. Google is up 26%, and yet people are kind of like, it's actually being succeeded. But part of the reason it's being succeeded is that Google is more than Meta. Meta is very consumer facing. There's no business going on. There's no enterprise stuff. It's all heavy consumers. And that's definitely an opportunity in a business to optimize that. And they keep optimizing and spending 100 billion, 150 billion. And they are seeing big jumps in their stuff. I talked to two analysts with RBC, the former Royal Bank of Canada, follows the internet. The other one is sort of the director of equity analysis.
I totally got their acronym wrong. I always thought it was Royale Bank with cheese. It's not. It's just RBC.
No, it is not cheese. That is a cheesy. It's a cheesy joke. I will say that.
You guys call me cheesy?
It is Munster cheese on the half shell.
I'm focused tonight.
No, you are not. Let's just take a little shot of Red Bull or something. I don't know, whatever it takes. Anyway, RBC, and we were talking really ultimately about this place where advertising sits right now. And everybody's like, you're talking about Nielsen, that's great, that's big, it's so much smaller than what's happening in digital. Video advertising is already 27% of revenue in all digital advertising, which is like $280 billion a year. A lot of money and growing fast. And so that means in particular, Meta's Instagram Reels are doing great. Generates some crazy amount of money. And this is kind of, like we're talking about kind of old school TV, cable and broadcast. It's like, those are nice. And like a big brand, if you're a big brand and you're selling pickups or pizzas or whatever, or Coca-Cola, as one of the guys said, basically, as far as Coca-Cola is concerned, its total addressable market is everybody with a mouth. It's like, that's about right, because they just want everybody to drink Coke or some variant of Coke. Facebook slice, dice, da 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 da. That's not really what, Coke just says, give me as many eyeballs as I can, and I'll try and entrance them with our wonderful AI ads or whatever, and the feel good of slurping down sugar water. It's going to be awesome. But everybody else is shifting to video, highly targeted, increasingly AI assisted, if not generated. Bespoke ads is going to get increasingly smaller and smaller little slices that are ads for you, not just ads for people like Dan, but Dan. And obviously they'll be able to extract things. But
even traditional media companies are doing it.
let me finish. What's interesting about all this conversation is going on, and they said, but one of the ones that is got a chance to be bigger still is Amazon, because the old joke about the department store owner says, I know I'm wasting half my advertising spend. I just don't know which half. Now you know exactly what is getting where. But there's a last step, which is, you reach these people, you talk to them, they were very likely to do stuff, but you don't know that final step. Did they buy something? Amazon knows you bought something. You saw our ad, you bought something. And that's incredibly valuable. And you start layering in all the ads that they got, all the video they've got. That's going to be a business, I think. It's already, last I saw, it was 31 billion in advertising 18 months ago. It's got to be closer to 45 or something like that by now. So,
well, Fox this week unveiled the Fox Flash Impact Report, which is their attempt to tie ROI to, but
yeah,
they don't have nearly.
I thought it was their attempt to join the DC cinematic universe, the Fox Flash, or the DC Nintendo cinematic universe. Because Star Fox came out with a new game too this week.
We both saw what happened to the trade desk, sort of a continuing bad story. They beat expectations on revenue, but everybody's worried about them still growing. An open platform, and everybody's looking to maximize programmatic money. It's just not enough. But walled gardens like Amazon, which can deliver everything, true vertical integration, now have an advantage, and everybody's kind of turning to those kind of I guess you'd call it.
Well, yeah, that's definitely full funnel. There's no doubt about that, because with Amazon, you get down to the actual sale, as I was saying. But right. So if you're an open platform, as my RBC guys were saying, it's really about how much inventory. The more stuff goes through your shop, the better you do. And the question is, are these walled gardens that are extremely efficient going to cut you off from being able to get the volume you need to really drive growth? Because that's what Wall Street cares about. So they have a good story about independent, no conflict of interest, but can you get enough stuff going through there that is served and taken care of, that pays the bills and then some, to allow them to grow? And same with Magnite and some of the other ones. They all face some of the same challenges.
Is there any kind of, obviously right now it's not a time where you'd have the discussion, but maybe when we have government again, we talk about it. Antitrust concerns to having one company control so much power in the ad market?
Well, technically, we've got a handful of companies, wall gardens, that are very large gardens. Nebuchadnezzar had never had a walled garden in Babylon like this one, but it's a handful of them now. It's not, none of them is close to 50%. I think it's problematic to have fewer of these, but it'll be interesting to see if anybody cares. Businesses could get beat up pretty good, or if it's only a handful of players and you're just sort of jockeying for, we can reach them better, or we can reach this audience for you this efficiently and cost this much, it really doesn't leave much room for the independents. That's one of the challenges. But that's also kind of network effects. The bigger they get, the bigger they get, as Bob Metcalf might say.
Well, happily, connected TV isn't going away. Our partners at Hub Entertainment Research this week unveiled new survey data suggesting that 46% of respondents said that fast programming is a must-have now. They can't live without it. They would die.
And die fast, let's just say.
It's accretive. 60% say they watch their fast in addition to their subscription video on demand platform. So they're not itching SVOD to get to fast. I think we all kind of like have explored this as
yeah. I mean, it's an interesting thing just to think about that sort of evolving diet, right? A connected TV diet. So your Samsung TV Plus, and you've got, I don't know, what do they have, 1,000 channels or something of fast stuff, or your Roku, and the Roku channel serves up a bunch of stuff, and it's all broken out. And maybe you just don't want to dive into Netflix and try to figure out, I want to watch this one or that one, no matter how good Netflix is. I mean, it's its own different thing that isn't that. I don't think it's that different. Do I watch HBO tonight? And back in the cable heyday, do I watch HBO tonight, or I just take whatever CBS serves up because it's going to be a bunch of police procedurals and some lame ass sitcoms? But it's comfort food. It occupies that space and doesn't get me into a fight with my spouse, blah blah blah, that kind of stuff. That where
who can
I
fight
think that's
over a
where we're going.
sitcom? You put Joey on.
You could not make me watch Saved by the Bell, but that's just me. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I get it.
Wasn't my jam. But the point is, fast ends up being like comfort food or background noise. And that's one of the issues that's actually interesting for the advertisers is what is the context of the consumption? I'm not going to watch a really heavy duty Apple TV sci-fi show or, a Netflix, I don't know, a romantic thriller or HBO Max, whatever it is that's going crazy this week, unless I got full undivided attention. I'm putting on a ball game or something while I'm cooking, for instance.
Right.
And I just want that on, and I can look over, it's like, oh, great. But if maybe you're not into sports, fine. So what do you put on instead? Maybe it's some fast channel of sitcoms from 1993, right? 90s sitcoms. That's totally a fast
Man on
channel.
Fire, the new Netflix series. Action-packed. It was a novel.
It's a remake of the Denzel Washington movie, but there was another movie, I think, that had a white guy in it before that, right? Wasn't there?
No, I think it was a novel set in Europe, and then it was set in Mexico with Denzel Washington, and now it's a series, and I'm enjoying it. Set in Rio de Janeiro.
Yeah, it's getting some nice conversation depending on your man on fuego.
Well, it's a really interesting backdrop. I mean, it's a really kind of complicated city, like a lot of South American cities, these sort of walled off enclaves of affluence and just mountains and mountains of stacked.
Do you talk about the favelas of Rio and the slums and the Capital Gang? A bunch of fun people, those guys.
Anyway, well acted, well directed, well written, well executed, top notch. Top notch.
I had a brush with magic myself this week. Unfortunately, my spouse had a fall, and we weren't able to go to the premiere of the shared immersive experience of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, the first of the 8 films that were spun out of 7 J.K. Rowling books by Warner Brothers over, I don't know, 15 years, 12 years, whatever it was, that were enormously successful. Rowling then kind of pissed on her brand a bit with her divisive statements about trans people, which I don't like. But lots of people don't care. And I point out in the column, and not that different from the Michael Jackson biopic called Michael that has $577 million in global box office after 17 days. So clearly people can separate the terrible person at the middle of creating an amazing work of art or set of works of art.
A key piece of narrative lore for a lot of people at a very formative part of their life. So I don't.
Oh yeah,
enduring and
yeah, absolutely. I read all the books to my children as they were growing up, and they are ardent readers. But they and their whole generation were transformed by those books enough that they would stay up till midnight to get the new book when it came out, read it multiple times before I would even see them the next time I would see them, because I didn't have custody. I mean, I'd see them a couple times a week and every other weekend, blah, blah, blah. But they might have read it like 5 times by the time I saw them. And these books are like this thick. They're doorstops, right? A whole generation of kids grew up reading that stuff. And it's, it spawned a hit game, a Broadway play, or maybe it's a musical. I couldn't keep track. It's multiple spinoffs. Now they're doing a remake, a TV episodic remake of the original story with kids that look disturbingly like the Daniel Radcliffes.
has other content.
So Cosm does this thing called, they've had a couple other movies, The Matrix and Willy Wonka, and this one is the first one of these. They have a big blowout premiere. They really go to town on it. It's pretty cool what they did. They kind of remade the inside to look kind of like the Hogwarts long tables with the meals. So for the premiere, everybody got to sit there and eat like magicians or kings or royalty. You take your pick.
Right.
And then the next day, they kept everything up, minus the royalty eating, but kept the cool, weird popcorn toppings. Everybody got a Harry Potter scarf and a commemorative ticket for that first day. They upsold these things like you would not believe in terms of price. And they had 5 screenings all sold out down the street, waiting to get in. Pretty amazing. And they've got multiple screenings sold out for the next several days. And then they'll show it off and on in between all the different sports things that they do in Cosm. I call Cosm the world's greatest sports bar because you go into their big 87-foot wide dome, and it just wraps a sports event around you. And now they can do movies. And I just think between this and what the Sphere is doing with The Wizard of Oz, which already has surpassed $250 million in box office for a 90-year-old movie that didn't even break even when it came out.
Right.
We're starting to see it's a new thing.
Exhibition, really. That this is something you can't do in the home.
Right. This is a thing that will extract people from their home theater to go see things in a theater. So maybe it's not that big, but look, IMAX and the other premium screens, this is the next step beyond that. Those are pretty immersive because they're so big, like 5 stories high, sound that wraps around you. This is that next step. And
well, I had a flashback while reading through your segment of the newsletter this week. It was the middle of the pandemic, and I was really excited to see the new Christopher Nolan movie, Tenet. And damned if it just didn't work at all. I mean, trying to watch that kind of like his, serious sci-fi takes some immersion yourself. You've got to be engaged. You've got to like follow the concept and wrap your head around it. If you're at home hanging out on your phone, it just does not work. And I tried to watch it again, never did. Christopher Nolan's a serious guy, serious filmmaker. He never liked the fact that Jason Kilar put it out, direct to streaming, although there wasn't much of a choice in those days.
He didn't actually put Tenet out direct to stream. If you recall, it came out like 4 months after the pandemic lockdown hit. They still ran it.
Yeah.
And it didn't go direct to stream, but the entire 2021 slate did, including the 4th Matrix movie. Speaking of, the guys over at Cosm, the 4th Matrix movie, which actually had 63% Rotten Tomatoes, both critics and audience. So that's pretty solid. It's not amazing, but solid. Didn't do anything. Village Roadshow, which had been a co-financing partner.
I saw that movie, and you could shoot me up with very high-end opiates and just surround me with like the perfect air temperature and the best culinary delights that you could come up with, and immerse me in 360-degree video and sound, Dolby. And I still would hate that movie. But go ahead.
Well, my point merely being that Village Roadshow, which has since gone bankrupt, complained that their treatment, putting this and the rest of that slate on direct to streaming and releasing it in theaters at the same time, hurt their opportunities to exploit further sequels and other money-making opportunities. They refused to pay $125 million to Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers sued to get those payments. Village Roadshow has gone out of business, as I said. They ended up settling for a $57 million payment toward a film that definitely underperformed. But it's interesting to see, that is a different era, but it's also a reminder because one of the outcomes of what I thought was actually a defensible
Roadshow. I mean, it's a hit.
Yeah, Village Roadshow. Yeah. So they're gone. But
is that what
they went? It helped. It helped. Sure. They say it helped because they didn't make any money off of it. That was their claim. It wasn't. They ended up settling. That's what matters. But the bigger
production outfit, the Road Warrior movies.
They did a bunch of stuff with Warner Brothers, and I can't do chapter and verse on that, but they were co-financing partners for 15 years on a bunch of their big movies. And the whole thing was, we'll put money in, we'll pay part of the cost, we'll get half the profits after you pay off your P&A. And interesting model. We're one of a handful of these companies that did that, and it was a business for a while. And it wasn't just whether the Matrix 4 was good or bad. It was really the internet. I mean, not the internet, the COVID stuff, the lockdown, the impacts on theatrical releases for a couple of years, then the movie, the actor and writer strikes, et cetera, et cetera. It was a bad time to be carrying a lot of debt. I'll just say that.
Well, here we are.
They went away. So,
we're on good plan.
I had not finished because the one thing I wanted to say, you mentioned Christopher Nolan, and Christopher Nolan upset with the way Tenet was handled and the whole putting things on, and he didn't like the way they handled a movie from his sister-in-law and his brother Jonathan, a little sci-fi film that was also one of the ones that went up, and he stomps off to Universal, where it turns out 2 years later he releases Oppenheimer, which goes on to win 7 Oscars, including Best Picture and Best Director. And now he's got The Odyssey coming out in a month, about 2 months from today. So that's one of the unexpected, unintended consequences of them putting everything out in 2021.
It was bad for the movie business, the pandemic.
It was. It was. They're going to release 30 films a year. It's going to be great. I can just feel it in my bones, along with everything else he's going to do.
You felt in your bones last week when I brought up the NFL Network and Red Zone after the draft being taken off.
It felt familiar.
Well, I mean, there's nothing on except for studio shows and like replays of Super Bowls, but there was something to it. Comcast has taken this pretty seriously because they're worried there's a lot of backdrop with the NFL resetting its
right. There's a few games in play, right? So
there's a big backdrop to this, and NBC Universal Comcast do not want to be left behind. They do not want these games that are on the NFL's own branded channel, now managed by Disney. They don't want the games to come off. There's 7 regular season games a year, and so they're using carriage on their pay TV platform to leverage reassurances. I thought it was interesting. Other stuff came out this week. We thought that Rupert Murdoch had reached out.
We don't want to lose track of what you just said. So you're saying that they did a blackout to try to exert contract provisions that would prevent them from losing those 7 games within the red zone stuff package that they have. There were 5 other games I thought that NFL.com had that are now going to YouTube, right?
I think right? Split between, that's what Netflix is negotiating for, or I think I'm right about that.
They might take a couple of those games. So one's an international game, right. One's the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Right. Yeah. There's some stray games separate from any deal that would have to happen with the Players Association to add an 18th week.
Well, it's vastly complex. There's just so many different negotiations happening, so many partners. It's, just from never mind the viewership and the supposed viewer revolt of like it going to streaming, there being too many outlets. The rights issues are just so vastly complicated.
Right. And they're trying to anticipate what's going to matter as a distribution platform in 2033, here in 2026. So 7 years from now, given all the change we've seen since the pandemic, I mean, it's useful to have that little conversation about 2021 and, everything's hit the fan and we're going to release all our movies on streaming as well as in theaters at the same time. Boy, that feels like ancient history, but how much has changed in that 5 years? Right? So 7 years in the future, what's going to work? Right? Like for TV, are people going to be playing anything other than flag football?
It's hard. Yeah. I mean, just right now, just the oppressive lens of the here and now and the kind of rampant cronyism that affects everything. And this is where I'm going to get on to what I was going to say. About a month ago, we in our newsletter, we were the first to come out and say it, not that we're a big scoop machine, but we said Rupert Murdoch has talked to Trump.
We had a scoop. Own it. We had a scoop. You had a scoop.
This sort of sudden investigation of their antitrust status is spurred on by Rupert Murdoch talking directly to Trump. The Wall Street Journal, which does groups, confirmed it. There was a dinner. I guess Trump was wined and dined by Rupert. I don't know how that works. Does he fly to Washington
Did he give him a peace prize? That's really the crucial
question. They go to McDonald's or something. I don't know how
that works. Did he give him an NFL peace prize, the Fox peace prize? What did he give him?
He told him that if Fox is priced out of the NFL market, broadcast TV goes away, all your ambitions to control right-wing news take a little hit. So I guess that confirms what we all thought. But what was interesting, the part that I thought was new news, was I guess Roger Goodell reached out to Trump's, the White House.
Susie Wiles, Chief of Staff.
Chief of Staff for the White House, right. She's the daughter, I didn't know this, of Pat Summerall, the legendary NFL player.
Yes. The kicker and commentator who had a wonderful voice and probably worked for, again, CBS for 40 years. He was a kicker. Yeah. Wow. I mean, back in the day, they were kickers and quarterbacks, but, like George Blanda. He kicked for the last 10 or 15 years of his career, but he started out as a quarterback and a kicker.
Right. It didn't start being a specialty position until the late 60s, 70s, right?
Till Garo Yepremian comes along. He's way too small to be anything else, but man, he can sure kick that ball. And Jan Stenerud and all those guys, all those little soccer-playing European dudes who were kicking it Sidewinder style and much more accurately. And now we see people booming these things 65 yards down the field, which is ridiculous.
You scratch and claw and look for any vein of influence you have to try to steer the ship. The old system of law and order is kind of been cast aside. I just thought that
you know what probably happened though. What probably happened is just like Mario Rubio gave the Pope a crystal football. They probably had a leftover one. They ordered 2, and they gave one to Trump, and then Rubio took it and gave it to the Pope, and the Pope went, "Wow." That's literally his response, which is not a good sign for peace in our time. He is. He's he's a White Sox dude through and through, but he's a baseball dude. Yeah. He's less, the Bears are fine, but Chicago native, White Sox, South Side, that's his thing. So they bring a crystal football to the Pope. Just thinking that maybe that was left over, it was given to Trump. Trump went, "Wow, Mario, give this to the Pope. It'll be good with him." That's probably what happened. Rupert.
Yeah. Life's a trip home.
Yeah.
So you want to talk about your big shoe video? I thought it was entertaining. I know I checked you on it.
It's entertaining as hell, and what was interesting about it, I am part of another podcast. It's a restarted during the pandemic. A friend of mine who used to work for Nike for 20 years, including running their women's operation in China, a $1 billion unit for Nike back in the day, and went on to be CMO of a couple of other shoe companies, had started this thing during the pandemic where we were on an audio-only platform whose name I can't even remember anymore because it no longer matters. It was big. Nah, it was big in 2020, and you would have live conversations, and we would do this thing live on the platform and all that, but we never had video. And like Apple Podcasts, we're doing it on the same platform you and I use for this, because one of the guys, a lot of them are really big. The other people are really big in marketing, not just my friend, but she was like, "Oh my gosh, this thing dropped, and this is the thing that Nike would normally do." But they did. Nike's had a really rough couple of years, and it was so cool and smart and looked like a freaking movie. It was 5 minutes long. It's got Timothée Chalamet in it. It's got Bad Bunny in it. It's got some of the greatest stars in soccer, world soccer. Yamin Lamal, Trinity Rodman, Dennis's daughter, who's far and away the greatest player, the NWSL, Lionel Messi, of course. And this really fun story that they kind of made up about these 3-man street soccer team that has never lost in 30 years, and this superstar team shows up to play him. It's very fun, but more importantly, the competition going
like that they de-aged them, right?
Yeah, they had some stars in there from back in the day and did some of that.
David Beckham shows up. He looks like he's 25 years old again.
He still looks like he's 25, but just with deeper tattoos. It's really annoying. Yeah. He's just an annoyingly handsome man. And very successful. He runs the Inter Miami team that Messi plays for in MLS, for instance, and owns it. But it's the real interesting part to hear these marketers. It wasn't just my friend; it was all of them, because they're all marketing geeks, I mean, at a very high level. One used to work for MTV Europe. The other one has done a lot of stuff with Supreme and Vice and people like that. They follow this stuff closely. And it's that war between Nike and Adidas that's been going on forever. Nike usually puts out the cool thing ahead of the big event. Well, the big event is a month from when our podcast goes out and our newsletter goes out on Monday is World Cup. It
So
arrives
Adidas
on the
spent how
11th of
much do you
June.
think on this thing?
Given that crowd of people in there, I mean, the talent fees alone had to be multiple millions. Production values are through the roof.
Right. And the goal
You
is
got
to
to figure 15.
kids wearing sneakers, playing the game themselves, and how this could translate to to bridge the gap between the stars they see on television. And I get that. But so you spend all this money, and the goal is to have it go viral, get folks like us to post it on our site for free.
Mm-hmm.
And
look, I mean, it's a hell of look. You had who's the guy? The point guard in Dallas for the Dallas Mavericks who's out with the knee thing.
Kyrie Irving.
Kyrie Irving, and he had that whole thing with the old guy thing. It became a movie. It was
right.
It was an ad thing and became a movie. Michael Jordan and Space Jam, and then LeBron and Space Jam Revisited.
Oh, did I ever tell you my Space Jam story?
You did not, and it's probably for the best. But anyway,
it's just really good. We'll go aside. I'll let you continue because this was actually a good inclusion, Dave. I'm sorry for checking on it. Yeah. I worked at the WB network briefly, the WB, and I watched Space Jam, a rough cut with the stars of the network, like the executive stars, and one of them was Garth Ancier, and he was eating a turkey sandwich right behind me, and he says, I'll quote him, "Bill Murray's so fucking funny," and like 5 crumbs ended up in my hair.
Well, that would bond anybody with a senior noted executive. He was. Was it Ancier? He says Ancier?
Ancier.
I mean, that would how you say it in France, along with Vincent. But Ancier is not how you'd anticipate a bunch of Americans saying it.
I think it was how they always pronounce the R in variety TV.
Ancier. Yeah. Well, that's not quite French. They would just leave the R off.
So you're leading us somewhere. We were talking about the history of integrated marketing when it comes to sports.
Oh, well, but so there's this long history of these things, but the fight between these two major shoe brands and the one-upsmanship and ownership of kind of a mind share that Nike has been able to enjoy for decades of really smart pieces that take something related to some big sports event and then go into this cool, Spike Lee and Mars, things like that, that were tied to sports, but got into culture and all that. Adidas did it, and Adidas did it better than Nike's.
Right. I mean, it was a very good video. It's what they say. There's a rule in the business. Generally, by the time you have Ben Affleck and Matt Damon do a biopic about you and you're celebrating your own legacy, you've jumped the shark.
It's too late. You've jumped the shark. Yeah. But I just think it's really interesting. And with the World Cup a month away, and it's going to be nuts. I mean, The Guardian just did a piece about all the things to do in Los Angeles of the 16 venues that will be on tap. I think a half a dozen games will be played here out of the 70 some odd games. Most of them will be played in the United States, but I think 16 each in Canada and Mexico. But the bulk of the games will be in the United States. I mean, it's building, but I don't get the sense. I'm seeing some things like tickets are too expensive. You get these crazy stories like, $150 round trip train ticket from Manhattan down to the Meadowlands and back for the final game. Yeah, $10,000 for the finals tickets.
We talked about this. It's nuts. The expense.
It's nuts. Well, but there's expense, and this thing feels a little exploitative, perhaps. And boy, it'd be shocking to associate exploitation with FIFA. Ooh, never saw that happening before. But it is so over the top, and given the disaffection many people from other countries have with the Trump administration and or difficulties getting the visa to be able to come at a time when also jet fuel is scarce. So paying for the plane ticket is tough. I don't think it's going to be the same international bonanza that was expected a few years back. And that'll be interesting to kind of track.
The plane fare is real. The impact to the economy is real for sure.
Yeah. And particularly in Europe and Asia, though. I mean, they have even tougher access to jet fuel. So if you're coming here from other countries that don't have the same stuff, I mean, their jet fuel is going to be scarce.
For transoceanic flights, just make it, just take it to another level.
Right. So I don't think this is going to be the big payday that a lot of people were hoping when all this was going on. Like hotels are kind of going, oh, we might have a few rooms available, things like that. So
we had all this. I will say this: we had several people interested on our personal Airbnb, our studio, and a couple since it's rented out, but it's not the people going to the World Cup this summer. So
right. That's too bad because that would have been kind of fun to have some of those folks coming through and I don't know, honking on their vuvuzuela.
That market is demand-based, and we expected the numbers to get higher than they have. The platform sets the price based on local demand.
Right.
Lastly, did you happen to catch the latest on the Musk OpenAI trial?
It continues to unfold in rather languorous style. You kind of need to be devoted, but there are lots of little soap operas. I love the fact that at one point, he mentions that Siobhan Willis or whatever her name is his chief of staff. They ask him my chief of staff. Well, actually, it was the mother of 4 of his children / chief of staff. Yeah. So there might be some, I don't know, enhanced interest in taking care of this person that you work for, while she remained back on OpenAI as effectively. Spy is kind of harsh, but
typically him in the first week of testimony, and it didn't look like much of an issue. But there was also, we talked about last week how it surfaced that right before the trial started in late April, he approached OpenAI president and co-founder Greg Brockman and said, over text, felt about settling. Brockman says, how about we just drop our cases? And he said, you're going to be sorry. Or something to that effect. So the optics weren't good for Musk that first week, but they proved last week. Turns out Brockman had a personal diary. Personal diary was entered into Discovery, and it contains stuff that basically says, we shouldn't take this nonprofit and turn it into a for-profit enterprise. We'd be stealing from Elon Musk. Basically confirms this entire legal premise. I think it's damning evidence.
Well, yeah, and we'll see how it goes. I've long said, particularly after the Sony hack, when I told my colleagues at Deadline, don't put stuff in the email you don't want to be reading out loud in court, right? Well, now, don't put stuff in your personal diary you don't want to be reading out loud in court. It's like, oh.
What's a dance like it's your dad's day on earth, email like you're about to be deposed. I think that's the saying.
Okay. I'll keep that in mind. I never bought that whole the unexamined life is not worth living thing anyway. I'm unexamined as it is. And see how I turned out? So anyway, with that, we should wrap this puppy up. Thank you guys so much for listening. This is Next TMT Talks, the podcast expression of our collective broken brains. NextTMT.com is where you can sign up for our twice a week newsletter and get our quick access on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, on YouTube to the podcast here that you guys see. And, we're going to be having show dailies tied to some of the big streaming television conferences coming up. We'll be doing some of that. So you'll get very granular coverage of those kinds of things. Like, share, subscribe, comment. Let us know what you think. Let us know how you think we can be better. Trust me, we understand there's a lot of opportunity for growth here. And thank you. This is David Bloom with Daniel Frankel.
I'm Dan Frankel.
Over and out.